Chairman Willis, Vice Chair Daniels, Ranking Member Grimm, and members of the House Transportation Committee, thank you for this opportunity to provide interested party testimony on House Bill 251. My name is Gary Daniels. I'm the Legislative Director for the ACLU of Ohio. The ACLU of Ohio takes great interest in law enforcement and other government uses of surveillance technology, including drones, around Ohio. For many years now, local law enforcement has been purchasing, adopting, and using these technologies with nearly zero statutory restrictions at the local or state level. Indeed, Ohio is truly the Wild West in this regard, seemingly content with allowing these technologies to proliferate without any common sense regulations to protect the privacy and other expectations of your constituents and all Ohioans. These other technologies include, but are not limited to, automatic license plate readers, facial recognition, body cameras, gait recognition, cell site simulators, also known as stingrays, and X-ray vans, otherwise known as backscatter vans, and more. Again, barely regulated at the local or state levels. Our hope is House Bill 251 can become the vehicle, no pun intended, for reining in the use of at least one of these technologies, unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, popularly known as drones. It is certainly positive HB 251 forbids the use of weapons on or incorporated with drones. It is also positive HB 251 contains a warrant requirement for the use of drones to surveil homes and buildings from inside or outside, although the ACLU of Ohio is unaware of any law enforcement use of drones for the interiors of such places. In addition, it is highly likely current Fourth Amendment jurisprudence would require a warrant for the surveilling of interiors. But including such a prohibition in Ohio law provides belt and suspenders protection. HB 251 also includes a list of permitted use of drones by law enforcement without a warrant. These are a mix of situations that allow law enforcement to use this technology without sacrificing privacy, but also include some curious provisions. For example, House Bill 251 allows drones to patrol within 50 miles of a national border for purposes of policing that border to prevent or deter the illegal entry of any individual illegal substance or contraband. However, immigration laws are federal laws, and the duty for their enforcement lies with federal authorities. Even if Ohio or its local governments were to formally partner or are partnering with the federal government via the 287G program, that still does not confer upon them the authority to patrol for violations of federal immigration law. Related, the language about deterring or preventing the transportation of illegal substances or contraband can be interpreted as giving huge latitude for the deployment of drones anywhere and everywhere across Ohio, even without individualized suspicion of wrongdoing. Accordingly, the ACLU of Ohio strongly opposes this language in House Bill 251. HB 251 was also recently amended to explicitly make clear surveillance data is subject to Ohio's public records laws. To the extent this helps track how and when law enforcement and government use drones, this is a positive inclusion. However, such broad language also means how and when drones capture the travels and whereabouts of your constituents will also be available via these laws. That amplifies the problem with drones. In this case, not only can or will the government potentially know where we travel at all times, but so will the general public. If this is an unintended loophole, we suggest it be closed. As is, this is an additional provision we strongly oppose. There are key categories of regulation any legislation or policies to regulate drones should include, and we respectfully ask HB 51 be amended to include. Briefly, these are explicit permitted use of drones versus forbidden uses of drones. As mentioned, House Bill 251 contains some language in this regard, but it does not, for example, prevent law enforcement from following us to rallies, protests, or political meetings, to gun stores or gun shows, to our health providers, to our houses of worship, or anywhere or everywhere else. Number two, how long the data can be kept. A crucial bulwark against government keeping surveillance data for however long they want, for any purpose they deem fit, is fixed timelines for the deletion of captured data. Certainly for data relevant to an ongoing criminal investigation, such deadlines must provide flexibility. But all other data should be deleted as soon as possible to protect against abuses. Again, HB 251 allows the public to request this data and utilize or publish it however they want. Number 3, with which entities and persons the data can be shared. The concern here is not only can government and law enforcement preserve this data forever, they can also share it with all, including law enforcement and government in other cities, counties, states, at the federal level, and even other countries. Surely there are some situations where this makes perfect sense for investigations and enforcement, but current Ohio law and House Bill 251 make no such distinctions. And number 4, robust reporting requirements. These give Ohioans the confidence technology such as drones are being used in ways that do not impact civil liberties, if that is the case. In short, the ACLU of Ohio believes House Bill 251 can eventually provide the framework for a more comprehensive bill to adequately regulate the use of drones in and around Ohio, but the bill as currently written is not there yet, and as mentioned, contains several provisions which raise serious civil liberties concerns. The ACLU of Ohio respectfully suggests this committee further amend Amended House Bill 251 to be the best it can be, and join those other states that have managed to balance sometimes competing interests in a bipartisan fashion. The use of these technologies without proper restrictions deeply concern our organization, and we stand ready to assist legislators and stakeholders, however and whenever, with the goal of common sense regulations that still allow law enforcement to do their jobs while protecting all of our rights. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Daniels, for being with us. Really appreciate your input on this. Your comments are well taken. Any questions from the committee? Chair recognizes Representative Troy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Daniels. So you mentioned that other states have had legislation like this that you feel is a lot more balanced. Could you give us an example of maybe what state's legislation we should take a look at for?
Yeah, and I suppose this comes as no surprise when you look at other states. It's kind of a patchwork, and they kind of like, some states address some of these issues, some of them address others, but Florida and California certainly have laws that approach this more comprehensively. But again, what you have is all of these concerns listed. You might have a state that, for instance, regulates the use of drones with regard to private operators surveilling or capturing the data of their neighbors or other people, non-government uses, which House Bill 251 addresses in a positive fashion as well, not mentioned in my testimony. But for instance, there's, I think, at least 10 other states that have a warrant requirement to prevent the government from surveilling people just because the government feels like it. And that you run into some issues there, some conflicts with people, because there are people out there using current case law that says, well, if you're out there in public where anybody can see you, then what is the problem with the government surveilling you? If your neighbor can see what you're doing, or the person down the street can see what you're doing, what's the problem with the government doing it? But when those cases were argued and decided, we were talking about a much different society. That was constrained by the lack of technology. You're talking about actually putting personnel in the squad car or what have you, and following a person around, and good luck trying to accomplish that under law enforcement budgets 24/7. But now we quite literally have the technology to surveil an entire city 24/7 for any reason whatsoever. And so we think at the ACLU of Ohio, there should be a warrant requirement for that. Unless there is individualized suspicion that somebody is committing a crime or is about to commit a crime, the usual standards for obtaining a warrant in most situations. So you do have states that do address the warrant requirement. You have some states that specifically address law enforcement use. You have some states that specifically address private use of drones, but obviously what we would like to see is a big, comprehensive bill addressing all of this, and I'm not sure that any states are quite there yet. This has been a topic in state legislatures for, I would say, at least the last 15 to 20 years. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I will give you my personal comments because you've been a great partner to work with, and we greatly appreciate not only the concern, but the level that you have been able to help in the conversation from day one. And I will continue to say that Mr. Daniels has been the person who showed up on day one and said, thank you for bringing legislation, which is something that I never thought that I would hear from ACLU. But it's because you've been a good partner, and we've been able to work to the point where I feel like we're in a good spot. Of course, this bill's never going to be ended with us. It's just a matter of getting it into its next committee, no doubt, where I'm sure it will have more tailoring. Any other? Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just sorry for violating protocol and addressing Representative Troy without doing it through you first, but also thank you for the kind words. I raised concerns about some of the amendments to the bill, requested a meeting, and you granted that a few days later. So, very appreciative of that. And, we are willing to work with anybody on these issues. As I've coined it with you previously, we want to work with people who have a healthy skepticism of government. And that's what surveillance technology in the government is all about. I can show you places where this is abused with Democrats, including at the presidential level, and Republicans. This shouldn't be a partisan type issue. This is about protecting and preserving the privacy of all. So certainly anybody open to all of these issues and surveillance technologies I mentioned, I got thoughts, I got model bills, I've got everything to help and assist. We don't even have to mention that you are working with the ACLU, but we do have a very, very real problem here in Ohio where this is essentially unregulated with regard to government use of drones. And if I could also quickly mention, I had mentioned to you previously, if you look at what you do have in many places in Ohio, I suspect most places in Ohio, is internal law enforcement policies governing the use of drones. But that has no force of law, of course. And if you look at those policies, and I've worked at those policies on the local level, I've looked at them and what have you, and done surveys around the state, they actually very much resemble what the ACLU of Ohio and the ACLU nationally says should be ideally in a law. We just need to take some of these policies, again, where there's great agreement, essentially, with law enforcement and ACLU on this, and turn it into actual law. And that seems to be where kind of the speed bump is here in Ohio. We've had bills before for drone regulation that the ACLU, fully supported in the past with very conservative Representative Chris Jordan, who of course unfortunately passed away a few years back, and somebody not very conservative, Representative Mike Skindell, would partner on these bills, and 2 or 3 General Assemblies introduced them. They obviously didn't go very far, but again, that's a pitch. Again, I don't have to reveal that anybody is working with the ACLU or not, but we take this issue very seriously, and again, thank you for the dialogue, Chairman Willis.
Yeah, it's been great. Appreciate your partnership, sir. Thank you so much.